Welcome back to my inner sanctum. I'm your hostess, Countess Elizabeth, mistress of the macabre. Man loves to explore the blue oceans, and I do enjoy a sea shanty. The salty sea air and the feeling of being out in the middle of the calm seas must be exhilarating, but it is also easy to disappear while at sea. Today we will take a look at two cases of people who were lost at sea through misadventure or by accident. So let us sit in the rescue raft and wait for help to arrive as we explore our grotesque curiosity. Andrew McCauley was an Australian mountaineer and sea kayaker. He's presumed to have died following his disappearance at sea while attempting to kayak 1,600 kilometers or 994 miles across the Tasman Sea from Australia to New Zealand in February 2007. McCauley, whose resume included paddling 330 miles across Australia's Gulf of Carpentaria and 3 kayak crossings from Australia to Tasmania, had planned meticulously for the trip. He placed great trust in a homemade cockpit canopy designed to right his modified production kayak in the event of a capsize. The canopy, nicknamed Casper, did that job on several occasions, but McCauley's video diary, found when the kayak was recovered without the canopy, tells of him having to climb back into the kayak after being ejected after a hard capsize. The video also reveals that McCauley had glimpsed the high mountains of New Zealand's South Island in the last hours of his life. He'd come that close to completing one of history's most audacious ocean crossings. If he had managed another 30 miles, he would have been hailed as a genius. McCauley did not make his journey. I've always been drawn to challenges at the sharp end of what is possible, initially with climbing and mountaineering, and more recently with sea kayaking. McCauley wrote before his 2007 Tasman attempt. What McCauley had to worry about was bad weather along his crossing. The heavy weather came in earnest when McCauley was about 2/3 of the way across the Tasman Sea, bringing 30-foot seas and 40-knot winds. He had decided in advance not to request help in such conditions. Locked in the kayak under his smiling yellow dome, McCauley had in his hand a beacon that would automatically trigger a rescue. He didn't use it. McCauley had the ability to send messages along his journey. Andrew spent 28 hours locked in the kayak with the beacon right there. His weather router, Jonathan Borges, told The Age. He would have rolled several times. He had the nerve all the time not to activate the beacon, but kept sending messages. One read, "No picnic today." The next evening, the New Zealand Coast Guard received a garbled distress call. It was McCauley reporting that his kayak was sinking 30 miles from Milford Sound. In the recording, his voice almost sounds unintelligible. He sounds deeply fatigued, perhaps hypothermic. Some thought the message a hoax. A small search was launched that night and expanded the following day. The kayak was recovered about 24 hours after McCauley's last transmission. It was missing only the cockpit canopy. The paddle, satellite phone, GPS, and beacon, still not activated, were all in working order inside the kayak. McCauley was never found. He is presumed dead. No one knows what happened in his last hours. The prevailing theory is that the kayak capsized and McCauley became separated from it, with the Casper cockpit stowed in the rear deck. The boat was impossible to roll, and climbing back in was a sketchy prospect on the best of conditions. McCauley had performed the maneuver twice during his crossing, and reported it had been gnarly both times. In his fatigue, it's possible he couldn't get back in the boat, or it may have simply slipped from his grasp. Even in the light winds, a kayak will drift further than a man can swim. That was a tale about misadventure. But what about mysterious disappearances while at sea? Just because you are in a large ship rather than a kayak doesn't mean that you can't disappear. Early in the morning of March 22, 2011, a British crew member on the cruise ship Disney Wonder was captured by CCTV in the crew lounge, having a phone conversation that appeared to cause her some emotional difficulty. Several hours later, she missed the beginning of her work shift and could not be located anywhere aboard the ship, which was then off the Pacific coast of Mexico. Her disappearance was the first incident in the history of Disney Cruise Lines. At 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time that morning on the Wonder, off the coast of Mexico bound for Puerto Vallarta and Cabo San Lucas, Rebecca had missed her shift. She was not in her room anywhere else on the ship and did not respond to pages over the ship's public address system. A review of CCTV footage found one appearance of her, timestamped at 5:45 a.m. An early unverified account, purportedly from another crew member, claimed that she had gone overboard at 3 a.m., nearly 3 hours earlier, but this has not been confirmed. In the video, Coriam is talking on one of the ship's internal phones in the crew area. She appears distraught. A young man walks up to her and asks if everything's alright. Her mouth can clearly be read saying, "Yes, fine," after which she hangs up. She then walks away, pushing her hair back and putting her hands in her back pocket, mannerisms her parents say were common for her. There had been no record of her presence anywhere since the CCTV footage. The last person to see Rebecca Coriam claims that she was troubled, took drugs, and had thought about jumping overboard, while Disney and her parents claimed a rogue wave swept her into the sea. One article I found claims that Coriam's lesbian lover breaks her silence on the matter. Tracy Medley had broken her silence on the matter, saying that Rebecca was far from happy-go-lucky person painted by her family. Instead, she claims that Rebecca was in turmoil after being sexually assaulted as a teenager, used cocaine, and had once got so emotional she banged her head on the ship's steering wheel. Tracy, an American, and also her lesbian lover, claims, "I have nothing to hide. My silence was never about an admission of guilt. My silence was just to protect an image of my friend." Whether this is true or not, it's still a possibility that Rebecca jumped overboard. But it is also possible that she got swept away by a rogue wave. Well, that was truly a grotesque tale. It just shows that it's easy to disappear at sea regardless if you're in a small kayak or a large cruise ship. I want to think that rogue waves got both of these people, but the second case, it is also possible that she had jumped overboard. Nobody but Rebecca Coriam knows what the distressing phone call was about. Well, whatever happened, whether it was a rogue wave or intentional death, may their souls rest in peace. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe, like, and share if you would also like to keep exploring our grotesque curiosity. We will meet again in the darkness of the night.